So we launched it, a million views overnight, 10,000 users, kind of off to the races, started monetizing a month in. Yeah, now, now we've grown to about, I think we crossed 4 million users on Quizard itself, like about a week ago or two. We hit profitability within like 9 months of launch. Right now, Quizard is at about $6 million in ARR. We've hit almost, it's amazing because we have this like analytics map where you can see where in the world like things are lighting up, and you can see different times of day, different parts of the world light up. And so it's honestly amazing to see that we could have this like global imprint. What's been amazing is how we've done this with such a small team, right? We're like three co-founders, one founding engineer, one head of marketing, and a full-time designer, as well as like a set of part-timers. And we were able to, like, earlier this year, hit number 4 in the education charts in the US, which is insane because you look at the charts and it's like golf math, which is owned by TikTok. Then it was Duolingo, which is like, loved and beloved. It was then Photomath, which is owned by Google. And then it was us, like five, like 20 something year olds, like just working on this like app. So that was a really cool moment. And it really showed that we knew how to like grow the product and get a lot of eyeballs on it as well.
You're listening to Forum Founders. We tell stories of immigrant and first-gen entrepreneurs, investors, operators, and ecosystem builders. And on the show, you hear incredible stories that often go untold. Sidhant Bendre is the co-founder of Quizard AI, a neo-VC-backed consumer AI startup that has built a portfolio of products for students and professionals. Since launching out of a college dorm room in 2023, Quizard AI's suite of products has rapidly grown to serve over 4 million users globally, generating more than $6 million ARR and achieving profitability within its first year of operation. I'm excited to unpack all of it on the show. Welcome to Forum Founders, Sid.
Thank you so much, Andy. Yeah, I really appreciate you inviting me on here. I'm super excited about our conversation. Been super excited since we first met.
Yeah, me too. So I met you in person through an event at Pace University in New York. I heard a little bit about your origin story and background, but please share that with me.
Totally. So I guess I'll start from where I grew up. So I grew up in Nigeria for the first 16 years of my life. It was definitely like a pretty great childhood in terms of like good culture, good community around, but it definitely wasn't without its challenges. And I think a lot of that has shaped the way I approach problem solving today. Growing up was like, we had to deal with like water issues or like terrorist threats or like the Ebola outbreak or like power outages. And like, that almost teaches you how to like make the most of resources available to you. Yeah, but I think a lot of this resourcefulness in dealing with these situations, I feel like translated into how I took initiative in my own education, whether that meant going through like junkyards to find out like old pieces from like thrown away microwaves when I wanted to learn about superconductors and like magnetic levitation. I'd make my like physics teacher in middle school wait behind for recess because I was really into plasma thrusters for some reason. Actually, I know why. I wanted to build Iron Man at some point, like the Iron Man suit. And I was like, all right, this is a real like rocket engine. Can you explain how this works? The adversity almost bred this like sense of self, like high agency where I could like take advantage of like their resources I did have available. So like the YouTube and everything to learn what I really wanted to learn, that like break time to really think about where I wanted to go with my education. After 16 years, I felt like I'd hit a ceiling in Nigeria. Like a pivotal moment was like trying to ask my school to get a robotics team. And they were like, oh, like there's nobody who might be interested in it. And I was like, if you get the team, people will join. But they eventually ended up like funding an athletic track instead. And that's fair and all, but ended up deciding that I needed to leave Nigeria. Went to like UWC in India. So UWC is like a really cool school. It's actually somewhat of a social experiment. There are about like 17 schools around the world. If you watch the first Harry Potter movie, then you will recognize the dining room because it's from one of the first UWCs. And actually, it's got a really insane alumni. Like some of the alumni include like the past king of, or the current king of the Netherlands, as well as like Mira Murati, who's like the ex-CTO of OpenAI. So it's definitely got like a huge diversity of people coming out of the network.
So you're like, you hit the ceiling at 16 on where you were, and you're like, did you go to your parents, or like how did that conversation happen? You like came back home and then one day was like, man, I'm not learning anything at school.
Yeah, I think it was like it was a slow burn. It was almost like or I don't know if slow burn's the right word, but it was like I think I had started recognizing that I was hitting almost like a like ceiling with the level of depth that I could have with conversations around me. I felt like I was pushing a lot for my interests as opposed to being supported by having a community of like people who are just as nerdy as I was, or like people who wanted to figure out how to take apart toys and like build things out of those pieces. I feel like that robotics thing was like the last like straw for me in some sense. I did come back, to my parents. They weren't really like happy that I wanted to leave so early, but I felt like I needed to have this like change just so that I could like learn more because I knew I wasn't. It felt like I'd consumed all the resources available to me, and I felt like if I wanted to go any further, I needed a new environment to go in. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went to UWC, spent
Yep.
2 years there, graduated,
Yep.
and then where'd you go next?
Yeah, so after UWC, I think it like had opened my mind to like all kinds of like interests and domains and people from around the world. And I think I like realized that I didn't know if I had a sense of clear direction of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to work on. So I decided that I'm not going to waste a year in university. I'm going to take a year off, and like kind of just meditate on this a little. And so took a year off, was kind of in Nigeria for part of it, interning at some tech companies. The reason I did tech companies is because I was good at CS, and like that was something I knew I was good at, but I didn't really have it connected to some like purpose yet. Like was entering at different companies, and I actually was traveling a fair amount. I traveled through Europe a bit. I was also in New York, where I actually met with an entrepreneur there who had sold a company to Ticketmaster before. I had a conversation with him, and like I got to see how he operated his startup, and I was like, wait, this is kind of what I wanted. And what it was I wanted like I wanted diversity in the work I did, and I wanted to solve interesting and challenging problems every day from things that weren't just CS. But I wanted technology to be the like driving force behind it, if that makes sense. Solving problems outside of code, but I love that code is the driving factor in a lot of these domains. So after meeting this person, I came back and was like, all right, I know what I'm going to do in university. College, went to school at the U of R. Was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to attend. It's in upstate New York in Rochester, so really not the same weather as Nigeria at all. It was the first time I'd ever had to buy like shoes based on the weather. Insane learning. It was great though. I think the amazing thing about the US that I felt the lack of in Nigeria was the access to opportunity. So you can like the good thing about the US is if you want to work, like there's like so many options for you. It's like you want to work, you want to do a job here, come and work for us. First summer internship, I was working with this guy who's running a trading company, like a trading consultancy service out of his garage, and he needed help building some like data curation systems. And I was like, cool, I'll try out software engineering. Built, systems for him and like systems that scaled. And I was like, wait, this is so exciting because I was architecting, I was designing, I was dealing with like, this is fun. Let me go and try a real big company. Went to Slack the next summer. Slack was really nice in terms of like good culture and good company. But I honestly got a little disillusioned from what software engineering, like how cool software engineering could be or tech could be, because it felt very like, here's your Jira ticket, write your code and that's it, end of the day. Sophomore year, I spent some time thinking about like what else could be out there. And that's when I landed on AI and machine learning. Especially because as a machine, like someone who's like focused on machine learning, your goal isn't the technology necessarily as much as it's the problem space. Your goal is like, how can I model the world and use technology to like apply it to that world? And so I thought that this would be a great like forcing function to find like work that could be a bit more meaningful, a bit more impactful, and honestly a bit more exciting. Um, so I had the good fortune of like working with Zendesk for a year through a co-op on their machine learning team, helped build some of their like recommendation systems out there, which is really cool. And then had a summer internship at Microsoft working on some of their infra teams because I was really curious about like low level infra as well. Um, I think my final year of college was when I had my probably like one of the most like exciting jobs, which is um, there's a startup hedge fund based out of Rochester, and I'd actually interned with them earlier in my school year, but they now spun off to become this fully fledged like hedge fund, and I was working on their like AI trading. The amount of like ownership and agency I got felt like wait, I definitely want to work at a small company, or I definitely want to work on something. Um, Luckily, final year of college, I get like a text from one of my like closest friends. His name is Michael Giardino. We actually met on the first day of college. Like we were the first people to meet each other. It sounds like the most like bullshitted like VC narrative, but it honestly literally was that because we were lined up for orientation, and he was just facing me, and we were like told to introduce ourselves, like to like get to know the other person. And so we introduced ourselves, realized we are both into tech and startups and entrepreneurship, and decided to like skip the rest of the like orientation piece and just sat at the back and like kept started talking about things we wanted to work on. Exactly, literally. And so we'd worked through some projects throughout college and like both in class and out of class. And then he shoots me a text because one of his like frat mates was working on this app and was building something out, and they'd actually launched it and it was starting to grow. And he'd asked me because he wanted me to join as a third co-founder to like own a lot of the AI and technical pieces. We were all technical though; we were all CS majors, um, and I kind of felt like, yeah, this is it. Like, if there's anything that I wanted to work on, it was something high leverage and something that could contribute to the fabric of humanity in some sense. And I think for that, what I high leverage, yeah, I guess like another reason I guess I can take it a step back and talk about like why I went into AI in some sense. I spent like sophomore year thinking about what is the most important problem that people face. And I started and like in my investigations, I realized it was decision making. Decision making has been this technology that has been both the rise and fall of empires in the past. You know, like the wrong decision takes out an entire empire. The right decision grows into like a huge, monolithic, like global like brand name and stuff like that. And so I realized that decision making as a technology is probably the most valuable thing to work on. Um, and so anything that I could do towards that is probably the most high leverage move. This includes like machine learning, AI, working with data to help, augment humanity's decision making. But the most important part of all that is also like education. Like you need to be able to educate people on how to make good decisions, on how to like understand data and how to work with like context and critically think about what problems they're dealing with so that they can solve the right problems and they can like make the right trade-offs. And so in terms of like what is high leverage, I thought that work like using leveraging AI to work on education and helping improve educational outcomes is probably the most high leverage thing that I could do with like technology that can help improve the decision making outcomes of humanity. Because in some sense, through improving education, you can improve the like potential for humanity to achieve more, and therefore, like, what else can I be doing besides helping like educate?
Before we go to like Quizard AI and what you and Michael, you know, end up building, what's wrong with our current state of like education and that you observed or you found out throughout this process?
Yeah, I think that like um before like there's like two parts to this. There's like the before AI and like the currently with AI, which is still like, just an interesting issue. I think before AI it was like the education system, at least at the like what I'd seen up to the college level, was built for like assembly line like scale as opposed to like truly like educating the individual. It was built for like giving people skills to just like be able to be a cog in the system as opposed to like truly like craft and like create and like provide value to society. And like the best like anecdote I have of this is like I'd once talked to one of my professors about like the curriculum content for like a web app class, or web development class, and I was like, why are you teaching this stack that's like, it was like the lamp stack, which is like such an old stack. There are a few PHP fans out there, so I don't want to shade on them, but it's like such an old stack to use. And it's like, why aren't we using MERN or new technologies and stuff like that? And his answer was basically a non-answer. It was, I inherited the course from a previous professor, and so I've just continued it that way. And so it felt like people are just finding the easiest way to scale like the same sort of like systems. And yeah, that was just like, that was a bit upsetting because it's like now you have a generation of CS students who are taking this web dev class and not learning things that are like what they're going to use in the real world. I think now what's interesting with like AI is like we're at this inflection point where like students are now being given the tools to actually like take agency of their workflows and actually leverage AI to help make studying and preparing and learning and preparing for exams and stuff like that a lot more efficient. But institutions are still very slow. In fact, I think I was reading this report about the educational landscape in the US particularly, and I saw that as of 2024, only about like 24% of the institutions actually have any formal AI policying around this. And why does AI policy matter? It's because AI policy is going to shape how like students are like um how students are like encouraged to use technology to like engage with their learning. So for example, like I think a lot of AI policy you see now is just retrofitted like plagiarism like policy, which just means ban AI, like don't use ChatGPT, don't use these AI tools. The problem with that is it's too easy. That's like the big issue. It's really just a lazy attempt in some sense to get around like thinking about how can AI actually be valuable to recreate and reshape the education system. And I understand it's kind of hard. It's hard to change the education system entirely because it's become this like um, almost like fossilized like structure of how we like educate people and how we get our degrees and stuff. But I think the big problem is when the administration doesn't recognize AI and the benefits, it prevents like the schools from actually being able to adopt it and foster a better educational environment. For example, what's actually happened, it feels like, is professors aren't being given the right training that they need to understand how they can create like content with AI or how they can create policy with AI. However, like However, they're being forced to come up with like rules. Like for example, I think there's one college where it's like you can like the only policy or like instruction given from the school about AI policing was you have three levels of rules. Don't use AI. You can partially use AI, but you have to explain how you use it, or like you can completely like use AI completely. And I think this sort of kind of misses the point of what what true policy can allow us to do. Really excited about instead is like a world where professors can leverage AI to start creating a new educational landscape.
I love it.
Um,
I think this is a really big topic to talk about and explore. And I think we've seen some institutions especially like lag behind on new technology more than others. And especially when AI, when it's like every week there are new things coming out, new products coming out, new behaviors that people are taking on, and it's exploding. It's like this bottom up explosion that you've seen with Quizard AI is like all these students are using it already. And now these like from top down, they have to figure out how to adapt to that new world.
it's definitely a place where like the students are now growing and have adopted AI, and they're always like they always tend to be like the first to adopt new technology. And the problem is like now institutions and the educational curricula is falling behind, and because of that, we're just going to continuously get like it almost feels like they're trying to keep things the same in some ways, when really now we have this opportunity to create something totally different. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think that like yeah, there's so much I could say here on honestly like what I would really hope for AI to be like in the
Yeah.
education system.
So tell me about Quizard AI. What are you guys building for who? What are your end users doing with it?
Yeah, totally. So I can talk about Quizard. So I guess Quizard is our like company name, and we have through Quizard we have two products that we've launched. Um, so there's a Quizard AI mobile app, which is like an AI tutoring mobile app that we launched about a year and a half ago. The goal with the mobile app is to allow students to get support, the time they need it, as needed, when they need it. Um, the idea is like, it's 2 a.m. and you're like studying and you're kind of like struggling with a concept, and maybe you can take a picture of whatever you're stuck on, and then we can give you this AI tutor to walk you through it and help explain those concepts, but also point you to like resources online and externally where you can further ground your learning in. Um, so initially, we built this app which allowed almost kind of followed a photomath like user flow. If you know about photomath, um, launch it. We launched it with a viral video that got 1 million views overnight and translated into 10,000 users immediately. And so it's kind of
Wait,
off to the races from there.
that first video went viral.
Yep.
How
Yep.
how do you figure out what to create that would make things viral?
Yeah, it's our head of marketing is really, really good with this. I think he has spent hours on like TikTok for better or for worse, has spent hours on TikTok to understand what would like hit with the market. And so he had come up with good content that basically it was like a point of view, ChatGPT and Photomath had a baby, and then it's like a product demo. And I think what really helps is like with these videos, especially with consumer utility, is just like showing the product demo, showing it solve the problem. And making it relatable with a punchline. And luckily, it was also like fairly early on. Like ChatGPT had just existed for about a month and a half, like when we launched. So it's still a very like novel, nascent field. So people were definitely excited by AI, as they are now, but especially back then, it was very new and very magical. Um,
Yeah.
so we launched it, 1 million views overnight, 10,000 users, kind of off to the races. Started monetizing a month in. Now we've grown to about like I think we crossed 4 million users on Quizlet itself like about a week ago or two. We hit profitability within like 9 months of launch. Now Quizlet is at about $6 million in ARR. And like it's amazing because we have this like analytics map where you can see where in the world like things are lighting up, and you can see different times of day, different parts of the world light up. And so
Yeah.
it's honestly amazing to see that we could have this like global imprint.
Yeah.
And what's been amazing is how we've done this with such a small team. right? We're like three co-founders, one founding engineer, one head of marketing, and a full-time designer, as well as like a set of part-timers. And we were able to like earlier this year hit number 4 in the education charts in the US, which is insane because you look at the charts and it's like golf math, which is owned by TikTok. Then it was Duolingo, which is like
Yeah.
you know loved and beloved. Um, it was then Photomath, which is owned by Google, and then it was us, you know, like like five like 20 something year olds like just working on this like app. And so that was a really cool moment, and it really showed that we knew how to like grow the product and get a lot of eyeballs on it as well. But after Quizard, I guess we'd realized this point, and we kind of went back to the drawing board around what does personalized education really look like, and what does that mean? Um, I think what's great about Quizard is it's used in a moment where students are feeling stuck and really not unsure about like um, the concept that they're dealing with. But for you to like properly like think about like what it's like to have a really great tutor. A really great tutor is someone who understands what you know, what you don't know, and is able to understand how you communicate like what you do know and what you don't. But for them to like learn that, they're going to need a lot of time for you to speak freely with them. Imagine if you could only tell them, I don't know this, you know, I don't know that. It's going to take so long to really understand like what you actually do know, where your gaps are, and how well you know these concepts. It's kind of because of that, and because like we wanted to build something that was more integrated into like the daily workflow of students, that we started working on our second product, which is Unstuck. Unstuck is this web app which lets you upload all your like PDFs and PowerPoints, or like record your lectures into it, or upload videos, um, and then use AI to work with these files to either create study guides, summarize the notes, or like ask questions across all these files. Um, the like the main like crux of like Unstuck and having this like open-ended chat experience, as opposed to that like snap and like get explanation experience, is like we can now have a back and forth with the student. We can now like get data on how does the student like show confidence on a subject, a concept, versus like show like gaining confidence on another concept, if that makes sense. I think the idea is like with enough conversation, you can build enough context around a person to then create this like knowledge tree of sorts. Because the best way people learn is when you can like leverage past things that they're very comfortable in. Like let's say you're really good with physics, right? And you understand like um motion and like momentum and stuff like that. Can we use like all those concepts to now teach you economics from a framing that you really understand really well? That's the goal of like truly personalized education, and that's what we're hoping and taking a bet with AI. That AI can honestly hyper personalize like education, as long as we're collecting this context and getting this information about how someone represents what they do know and don't know. And Unstuck just creates a perfect like open-ended um, interaction plane to collect that sort of data.
That's the state that I think people who are like really into education technology have been talking about forever. Cause like Sid, I don't know if I told you, but like the first two companies I ever worked for were two ed tech companies. One was
Cool.
basically saying like students manually upload like courseworks and homeworks and tests and all
Yep.
that stuff onto this web cloud platform. And then you can like look through it and like look at people's notes and stuff like that. And then the second one was like this whole pedagogy of like assets throughout your educational life, and then you get to like reflect and connect and all that stuff. And now you essentially like what you're building with Unstuck is like 100x better version of like all those like old.
Yeah, I think AI has definitely created this like ability to hyper personalize at scale. And I think it's like now we're finally going to be able to like craft like someone's learning journey specific to them. I think the biggest goal then is once you can crack it at a college or school level, because the benefit of that is actually like college or school gives you like set parameters of what to learn, and you know what content matters and what doesn't. But if you can like really build the system, make it work, like show somebody a knowledge tree of what they know within their course content, and like have them like use that to actively like learn what they don't know, then when you can if you can master that, then you can go to like the lifelong learning problem, which is a bigger like the bigger bet really is like how can you create this like lifelong companion that helps you learn things you don't know and things you want to know more of, so that you never feel stuck. Because I think the biggest issue is if you want to go deeper into a topic, sometimes it's hard to know how to, and that's why we have curriculum, and the curriculum is designed to help someone go deeper into something. But what if you could just own that curriculum, and own your journey? The issue is you usually don't know enough about the topic to know where to go next. And so that's what we're hoping we can do with AI, is eventually hit like this lifelong learning journey where anything you want to learn, you'll be able to like learn from day one, or like you can see the whole path from day one, and just be more deliberate about your learning because that's another issue. But yeah.
A couple questions I have on the growth. So it's incredible that a month after you release Quizard, the mobile app, you start
Hmm.
monetizing. One of the things that
Yep.
we always talk about is like consumer is like so hard to monetize, and then on top of it, you're serving it to students who's like people don't really spend money as students, right?
Yep.
How do you figure that out?
Yeah, I think it's like I think there's something to know, which is back. They do spend money on clothes and food and stuff like that, but they are very picky on where they allow themselves to spend more money. So education is definitely the hardest place to like convince them to pay for anything. I think what it took and what's been part of our culture from day one has been experiments. So we've run a ton of marketing experiments, a ton of paywalling and pricing experiments, understanding where like people will what what will convert more, whether it's like a certain type of paywall with certain wording, certain copy, or maybe like a different business model. And so honestly, we've honestly got a lot of like growth that has happened purely because of all the experiments we've been able to run. And that's why like day one when we started building this next product, it was like, okay, we need to build out the experimentation infrastructure first because that's literally like how we are able to find the winning bets. And I think it's like we've taken this honestly from Duolingo because they're a very experiment first like culture as well, and they have so much documentation out there about how they like have run different experiments, how they categorize different users, and how they like shape their workflows um, to like like almost like resurrect certain users who are like dying off or stuff like that. And so yeah, I think experimenting is like the biggest thing because there are ways to monetize, but you have to be willing to like experiment a lot and like
Yeah.
really make that core.
And with Unstuck, are you monetizing right now, or is that all growth mode?
Oh, we're monetizing right now. Yeah.
Cool.
We're like working towards hitting break even. It's
Yeah.
been about like 3 months since launch, but it's been monetized. We've been monetizing since like 2 weeks of launch.
And do you monetize in a similar way between the two
Yeah,
apps?
subscriptions.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Um, and so the education, so I use a lot of more and more AI work into my workflow, as pretty much everyone probably. But one of the things around education that like I see as my behavior is I would have like on the weekends, I would have all these like long form articles where I'm like taking time to just read. And now I'm like
Yeah.
feeding it into AI first, looking at the summary. And if I look at the summary, I'm like, I want to learn more about that, then I'll read it. But like it's
Yep.
the step from, you know, read long articles have become like an intermediate step of using AI to get a summary to see if I want to spend time or not spend time. How
100%.
how does that affect like student learning though? Because if students are only consuming summaries and stuff, like are they actually learning like when you were 16-year-old, like hitting the ceiling and stuff? Like how do you think about that?
That's a good question. There's friction in education which is needed for learning. Like you need friction for learning. But there's also like friction that ends up being like unneeded or unnecessary or waste. I think, for example, what the way you've been, using AI, which is creating a summary to determine if it's worth the read, is honestly super high leverage and super highly valuable because now you've saved yourself like hours of time, like reading this entire thing only to find out that you could have looked at a different um book or essay or article that would have actually like scratched the itch that you were looking for in the first place. Similarly, the way we've designed our products, especially like for example, Unstuck that works with these resources, is like when a student asks a question or they like ask for summaries, we give them citations for the exact like minute in the lecture or the exact paragraph in the like textbook or the exact slide in their PowerPoints where we like got that information from where we generated that response. Um, in some sense, what we're giving students is a way to sort of like find exactly what they need to get themselves unblocked. Because I'll tell you, like my first year of college was really bad in terms of like my study habits because I would spend hours rewatching lectures just to clarify this like one sentence that I wasn't sure of and I had to like search through the lecture to find it. So I think what we're really doing is we see it as we're actually like removing the waste friction from people's learning so that they can actually focus on that real friction, which is now that you have the study guide, now that you have the summaries, now that you have the flashcards generated for you, you can spend time on actually doing the learning, actually doing the work, as opposed to spending time creating the system to then do the learning, if that makes sense. What we see is actually a higher productive, a more productive studying session. Honestly, it'd be great if like you could study less and earn, like still keep your grades up, and that's what we want because college is not just about academics. It's about like meeting friends, trying out research, going for internships, taking part in the community. And I think like I like felt like locked out of that in my first year, especially because I felt like I had to like do a lot of this like wasted work. And so I think in some sense there's like a chip on my shoulder and like I want to build Unstuck for the students who want to do more at university and don't want to be locked into like reading this textbook because they couldn't like, it's just like this dense document that is 90% irrelevant for the like one part of like one concept that they're trying to clarify.
This is super fascinating, and especially the growth rate that you guys are hitting is like
Thank you.
insanely cool to see from the outside. And I'm really excited to see like what comes next. So with Unstuck AI, like products you have, like what since we're recording this in December, like what does 2025 look like?
Yeah, totally. I think 2025 for like Unstuck, for example, is we're trying to figure out what more like I guess like we're spending a lot of time understanding what our users care about and how they like using Unstuck and what workflows they need like support on. For example, a lot of users have asked us for practice questions or flashcards. And the idea is like, can you create this like experience where I start my like, I'm starting my class in January. I upload all my content for this, and now I suddenly have this like all my flashcards, all my study guides ready to go. And I can now spend time like studying the actual material and not so much like worrying about what do I study and where do I focus. So I think most of our focus now in um, for early 2025 with Unstuck especially is like building more of these workflow integrations. Mind you, with the initial idea of like getting more of that surface area of learning, if that makes sense. So if you remember the original point about like how like Quizard had a bit of a limited user experience and user flow to capture like the depth of someone's expression of what they know and what they don't know,
Mhm.
by using flashcards and building these study guides out and building these practice questions, we're able to now collect more like data because let's say you do a practice question on our platform. We now recognize what you got wrong, what you got right. We can now use this data and gain more context out of your understanding. So like future practice sessions could be better because a lot of this can be generated dynamically, but with this new context. So I think for us, what we're getting really excited about is like really turning up the gear on the way we integrate into your workflow and the way we understand more about you as a student and how we can use that to now make studying a much more delightful process for every
Yeah.
student.
The next level of like product consumer facing products, whether it's like education or like even I think education that is super special to me when I look at it is like anyone can learn and anyone can
Yep,
take the right tools to like keep building skills or like doing that outside of the school setting. So very excited for it. The closing question I always ask, especially founders on my show, is what are you optimistic about? I think for us as immigrants, moving, like you said, you've done it multiple times where you move from Nigeria to India, India to the US. Moving is really optimistic act because you're like, I can find opportunities there and starting a
yeah,
company as well. So I love closing my show with the question of like, what are you optimistic about?
totally. I think what I'm super optimistic about, it's still within tech, it's still with AI, is just like the ability for what AI can do with education. I think the day I'm looking forward to is when we can stop exams. I feel like exams are like an archaic thing of the past. How can you judge someone's learning on like this 1 hour sitting and their ability to recall information at 1 hour sitting? It feels like such a waste. It feels like it's not true and it's not representative growth. What I think AI will enable us to do, especially when we build like um, this AI teaching assistant for the professor, or like build like AI agents that are more integrated in the classroom, um, is you can actually build more of a continuous evaluation sort of like setup. So that's actually a product I'd be really excited about because imagine it's kind of like you're working throughout the semester using this AI, and it's able to understand and watch you develop as a person, understand you grapple with the concepts, understand the concepts, and watch you like apply them to different problems. And I think like that sort of examination structure is a little more one healthy, but a lot more true to somebody's learning, because we express knowing things through conversation. Like I talk to you and I say, hey, I understand this, and I explain why, and then you're able to say, hey, actually, he does understand the concept. So I think what I'm excited about AI, um, the one thing I'm excited about AI in education is this ability to like change how we evaluate people's learning and also create a much more healthier, less stressful like learning environment. Um, I think, not just for the students, but also for the professor. I think if you like, I've talked to a few professors about like, what does their day to day look like? And a lot of it is like administrative tasks, actually. It's like dealing with deadline extension requests, like homework submissions, stuff like that. And I think I'm excited for the day where AI can like be that buffer between the professor and these like very valid, but still very repetitive questions from students. Instead, to allow the professor to actually make time for more meaningful interactions with students. So I think there's a lot of like concern about AI like replacing human interaction or like making humans a bit more disconnected. What I actually think AI has done and will be continue to do is force us to think more critically about the systems that we've built and relied on. You know, like instead of thinking about this assembly line education system, can we build a more like can we critically think about what's going wrong and like how we can actually improve it and use AI to automate a lot of the like necessary infrastructure that doesn't need a human to be there to do that. So, for example, like we need someone to respond to the request about extension. We need somebody to respond to like, what's on this, the exam tomorrow, or like, can you explain this thing from the syllabus? Um, but we need more time for professors to both like pursue their own research, but also actually develop a proper relationship with the student. And so I'm excited for AI to finally give time back to humans to be like human, and just like learn together and like really feel like they're growing. So yeah, that's my optimism there. It's really about like creating more meaningful like educational experiences.
Awesome. And for people who are listening, who wants to reach out to you, learn more about Quizard AI or Unstuck, where do you want to send them?
Yeah, they can DM me on Twitter, like Sid Bendre, SIDBNDRE. Or if they want to shoot me an email directly, it's just sid@quizard.ai.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on Form Founder, Sid. This was an awesome conversation and really excited to see how you grow multiple products in 2025 and beyond.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for the time.